At night, the house never sleeps. The walls creak with purpose. Footsteps wander through empty halls, and doors open to nowhere. Some say the corridors shift, that they were designed not for the living, but to confuse the dead. In San Jose, California, there stands a mansion with more than 160 rooms, hundreds of staircases, and no blueprint. For 38 years, construction never stopped, day or night. And at the heart of this labyrinth lived one woman, Sarah Winchester, the widow of a gun empire built on death. They say she built to keep the spirits away. But what if the spirits never left? Before we descend into the story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me uncover more places where the past still lingers in the dark. Now, let's return to the story. Sarah Lockwood Winchester was born into wealth, elegance, and education. She was fluent in several languages, studied music, and married into one of the richest families in America. Her husband, William Wirt Winchester, was the heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, the manufacturer of the rifle known as the gun that won the West. But for every rifle sold, another death followed. By the late 1800s, the Winchester name was stained with blood, battles, robberies, murders, and wars. And in 1881, when William died of tuberculosis, Sarah inherited more than $20 million, an unimaginable fortune. Within months, their only child, Annie, also died in infancy. Oh, grief consumed her. For weeks, she wandered the halls of her Connecticut home like a ghost herself. Then one day, she vanished. Rumors said she had gone to a Boston medium, a woman who claimed to speak with the dead. The medium told Sarah that her family was cursed. The spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles seek vengeance, she warned. They will not rest until you atone for their deaths. To escape, the medium said, Sarah must travel west and build, never stop building. A house that never ended would confuse the ghosts and keep her alive. In 1884, Sarah moved to California's Santa Clara Valley and bought a small farmhouse. She hired carpenters, gave no plans, and ordered work to begin immediately. Construction never stopped. Day and night, saws screamed and hammers echoed. Workers built stairs that led into ceilings, doors that opened into walls, and windows that looked into nothing. When asked why, Sarah simply said, "The spirits guide me." Neighbors began to whisper that she was building not a home, but a prison for the dead. Construction never stopped. Sarah Winchester never allowed silence. Even at night, hammers struck and saws screamed under the glow of lanterns. Workers came and went in shifts, following her cryptic instructions without question. The house grew in ways that defied logic. Staircases ended at ceilings. Doors opened into brick walls. Windows looked into other rooms instead of outside. There were no blueprints, no architects, only Sarah's word. She wandered the corridors, pausing suddenly to order a wall built, a doorway sealed, or a new tower to rise from nowhere. Sometimes she woke in the middle of the night and called for her foreman, demanding a new hallway, a new room, a new addition. It was endless, a maze expanding upon itself, twisting and folding like a living thing. To Sarah, it all made sense. Each new corridor, each turn in the floor plan, was another layer of protection, a labyrinth to confuse the spirits that haunted her. Workers whispered that they heard footsteps on the upper floors even when no one was there. Some swore they saw the glow of a single lamp moving through the darkness. Sarah herself, inspecting the house long after midnight. They said she would press her hand against freshly built doors, listening, as if something on the other side was speaking back. Over the years, the mansion became monstrous in size. 160 rooms, 40 bedrooms, 47 fireplaces. Some rooms were left completely empty, others filled with strange details. Stairways that led to nowhere, skylights in the floors, doors that opened into thin air. Locals began calling it the House of the Crazy Widow, but Sarah didn't care. For her, every new wall meant another day of peace. As long as the house grew, the spirits could never find her. Years passed, and Sarah rarely left her home. Groceries and supplies were delivered to the gate, and she spoke only with a few trusted workers. When the sun went down, the house changed. Through the stained glass, faint light flickered across endless hallways. The air turned cold, and wooden floors groaned beneath invisible footsteps. Sarah had a special room built, the seance room. Every night, at midnight, she would go inside alone, lock the door, and light her candles. There were no mirrors, no furniture, only silence and shadows. After these sessions, new construction orders always followed. Walls were torn down, rooms sealed, staircases rerouted. The workers didn't ask questions anymore. They obeyed. One morning, a carpenter found a door nailed shut. When they pried it open, they discovered a small hidden chamber, a single chair, a burned candle stub, and dust thick as age. No one knew when it had been built, or by whom. Rumors spread among the crew. Some refused to work at night. Others claimed to hear whispers in the walls, or the sound of fabric brushing against them as they walked. Sometimes, a worker would look up to see a woman's shadow moving past the upstairs windows, even when they knew Sarah was asleep. The house had become alive. Every beam and brick seemed to hold a memory. Every echo, another breath of the dead. By the turn of the century, the Winchester mansion had become something beyond comprehension. From the outside, it looked like a chaotic castle stitched together from dreams and nightmares. Balconies that led to nowhere, towers that rose above empty courtyards, windows sealed by fresh bricks. Inside, the air seemed heavy, as if the walls themselves absorbed every sound that passed through them. Visitors often described the strange sensation of being watched. No matter where one stood, there was always a draft, a flicker of light, or the faint feeling of another presence just out of sight. Sarah's routine never changed. She ate little, slept during the day, and walked the corridors at night, holding a single candle in her trembling hand. Some servants claimed she whispered softly as she moved, repeating names no one recognized. Others said she was listening to the house. Workers noticed that each morning, new instructions were pinned to the walls in her delicate handwriting. Rooms that had been completed were suddenly ordered to be torn down. Staircases were rebuilt for the third or fourth time. The sound of demolition was constant, echoing like a heartbeat through the endless maze. As the years went on, the mansion began to make its own noises. Doors opened and shut without cause. Chandeliers trembled even when the air was still, and faint knocks seemed to travel through the floorboards like Morse code from another world. A night guard once reported hearing a woman sobbing behind a sealed door. When he forced it open, the room was empty, except for a single rocking chair, moving gently, as if someone had just left it. Those who visited Sarah said she appeared older than her years, her eyes glassy, her voice hollow. Yet she believed she was keeping the curse contained, that the house itself had become her shield. To everyone else, it felt like the mansion was breathing, alive, restless, whispering to itself in the dark. In the winter of 1906, the ground beneath San Jose began to shake. It started as a low rumble, deep and distant, then rose into a roar that split the morning. The great San Francisco earthquake tore through California, and the Winchester House stood directly in its path. Walls cracked like paper, ceilings split, and massive sections of the mansion collapsed under their own weight. Sarah was in her bedroom when the tremor struck. Chandeliers swung wildly, glass shattered, and bricks rained down the grand staircase. Servants rushed to find her, but by the time they reached the upper floors, she was trapped behind a fallen beam. Hours later, when they finally pulled her free, she was silent, her face covered in dust, her hands clutching a small brass key. Dozens of rooms were destroyed, including the entire front wing. For the first time in decades, construction stopped. The air was thick with plaster dust, and the scent of cedar hung heavy in every hallway. Many believed the earthquake had freed something, as if the violent shaking had cracked open the barrier between the living and the dead. When Sarah finally ordered the repairs to begin, she insisted that the damaged sections remain sealed. Entire hallways were walled off. Staircases ended in rubble. She claimed the spirits had been angered and needed space to rest. From that day forward, no one entered those rooms again. Workers who stayed reported hearing muffled cries from behind the blocked walls and the sound of chandeliers swaying in empty spaces. Sarah spent more and more time alone, wandering through the surviving parts of the mansion with her candlelight trembling against the cracked plaster. The earthquake had changed the house and her. What was once her sanctuary now felt like a tomb that breathed. After the earthquake, Sarah Winchester became a ghost within her own creation. She rarely spoke to anyone. Meals were left outside her door, and at night the house grew still, as if even the wind avoided it. Dust gathered over unfinished staircases, while lanterns flickered in hallways that led to sealed walls. It was around this time that she ordered a new addition, a single, square room deep within the center of the mansion. It had no windows and only one door. Workers called it the quiet room, though no one ever saw her enter or leave. The walls were layered thick with plaster and lined with strange carvings that no one could decipher. Some said it was built to trap a spirit. Others believed it was meant for her solitude, a sanctuary where she could listen to the voices that guided her. After its completion, she began locking herself away for hours, sometimes days. The servants could hear faint sounds through the walls, the scratching of a pen, slow footsteps, and on rare occasions, the distant hum of something like a song. Rumors began to spread among the townsfolk. They claimed she had finally lost her mind, that the endless maze of her own making had swallowed her completely. But others believed the opposite, that she had achieved something few could understand. The house, they said, was her instrument. Every door, every stair, every misaligned window had purpose, to balance the world between the living and the dead. One evening, a worker claimed to have seen a glow coming from beneath the door of the silent room. It pulsed slowly, like breathing. When he knocked, the light vanished instantly. The next morning, he found a new set of plans pinned to the wall. More hallways, more rooms, more confusion. Sarah had spoken to no one, but the house had given new orders. By the time Sarah Winchester entered her final years, the mansion had grown into something unrecognizable, a vast and shifting body of wood, glass, and silence. More than 7 stories once stood against the California sun, though time and earthquakes had reduced some of it to ruin. Still, she kept building. Hammers still rang, nails still drove into wood. Visitors who came to see her described her as frail, her once bright eyes now pale and distant. She moved slowly through the halls, guided by memory alone, carrying a small oil lamp that barely cut through the darkness. At night, she sometimes paused in front of closed doors and whispered something to the wood as though bidding the house good night. The servants said she stopped sleeping. Every few hours, they heard her footsteps pacing above them. One evening, she instructed her workers to complete one final room. Small, circular, with no windows, built near the western wing. When asked what it was for, she simply said, "It will be the last one." That room, it said, was where she sat during her final night. A single candle burned beside her as she went through her papers, her handwriting trembling across the page. Outside, the night was calm. The wind moved through the empty halls, rustling curtains and stirring long-forgotten dust. When her servant entered the next morning, the candle had gone out. Sarah Winchester was gone, lying peacefully in her chair, her face lit by the gray dawn seeping through the cracks in the wall. In her hand, she held a small brass key, the same one she had clutched during the earthquake years before. The house fell silent. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, the hammers ceased, the saws stopped, and the great labyrinth of sorrow stood still. A century has passed since Sarah Winchester took her final breath, but the house she left behind refuses to rest. It still stands in San Jose, sprawling, uneven, and hauntingly alive. More than 160 rooms remain, connected by twisting corridors and staircases that lead nowhere. The air inside feels heavy, filled with echoes of footsteps long gone. Today, the Winchester Mystery House is a museum. Visitors come by the thousands, drawn by curiosity, fear, or fascination. Guides tell the same stories Sarah once tried to bury: the curse, the seances, the endless construction. Some tourists laugh nervously at the absurd architecture. Others go silent when the air turns cold, or when a shadow slips past a doorway. At night, the mansion changes again. Security guards have reported the sound of hammering in distant rooms, even though the last construction ended more than 100 years ago. Cameras capture faint lights drifting through hallways, sudden bursts of movement, or reflections of figures that vanish when approached. One guard swears he saw a woman in black, her face pale and unreadable, moving slowly up the grand staircase with a candle in her hand. Researchers who have studied the building describe strange magnetic readings and unexplained temperature drops in certain rooms. Some skeptics insist it's just drafts and architecture, the product of chaos, not the supernatural. But for those who have walked its corridors after dark, there's a different understanding. They speak of a presence, quiet but undeniable, that seems to linger just beyond the edge of sight. The Winchester House has become a monument not just to grief and guilt, but to obsession, a living labyrinth born from the mind of one woman who refused to stop building. Every wall, every sealed door, every stair that leads to nowhere still carries her intent to protect herself from the unseen. And sometimes, when the night settles over San Jose, passers-by claim to see a faint light in the upper window, flickering, moving, as if someone were still walking those endless halls, checking every door, making sure the work continues. Because perhaps, in a way, it never truly stopped.